was a big experiment. I wanted to feel cool and TED-like because they were like, this is TED Talk. Well, next is pressure. At least give me a hands-free mic. So this is super fun for me. The last time I was here, I was basically being chased out with pitchforks by the administration, who was sick of new ideas from me. And luckily Nicole was there to hold them on. And I moved out. My story is that I was here for 7 years. It's like 200 grams. For those of you who don't realize how long 7 years is. It's a really long time. One. But I moved out to San Francisco, and I moved out to do that thing that people move out to San Francisco to do, so become web watching, become successful, millions about. And I kind of had this, I made this decision, this commitment to myself that I actually wasn't going to come back and talk in the classroom until I got it. And fast forward to the end of the story, I haven't yet. I don't have the ability to work with projects quite yet. But the particular conversation that we're having today about doing what you love and loving what you do, and more broadly, just the idea of success, sort of where we go. Something I've been thinking a lot about lately. This photo behind me, which you absolutely can't see, is my dog Isis. And I was trying to find an appropriate picture to sit in the background for success. And I thought that this was pretty close. For launching out of a Christmas toy. Depending on what particular type of person you are, a little bit more laid back. Maybe this is a better version. She's so great. So we'll see what I end up actually talking about, but what I think the one point that I really want you to take away from this, the one thing that I'm going to try to argue, is that we're in a moment where our definition of success is up for grabs. And I think it's a moment we need to seize to change the story that we as a society tell about what success means. And I think, and I'm going to make a big statement here, that it will be the single most important factor in determining whether our generation lives up to its promise to change the world, is how we choose to define success in our lives. So let me tell you a little bit about me first. I was kind of always the guy who did more or less 100% exactly what they felt like was the right thing to do at the time. So when I was in high school, I was the guy who skipped class to study for a national academic competition, because it seemed like the right thing to do. As a guy who in college sort of organized my majors around whatever other projects I thought were really valuable. And one of those projects, the one that ended up becoming sort of the most transformational pivot point for me, the one that ended up with sort of all of us here together in a way, was studying abroad in Cairo. Studied abroad in Cairo my junior year, and quickly found myself working with Sudanese refugees. And this was a really, really remarkable experience for me, because it was the first time in my life that I had worked with a group of people in a sort of volunteer capacity who were desperately, passionately engaged in improving their lives. I had the experience back here on campus and in high school of working with people who just didn't care. It was bad, it was really bad, but I was good at connecting with people who really, really wanted to do something big and wanted to change their lives. So I was inspired, I was passionate. I ended up, again, not going to class there in order to volunteer. If on the one hand I was incredibly inspired, I was also incredibly frustrated. Sudanese refugees in Cairo have no rights, practically speaking. Not even the ones that theoretically they have, granted to them by regulatory protections. They fight for black market jobs. They struggle to learn English because they don't have access to education. And they try to get a place in third countries, like the US, like Australia, like Canada, which has gone to almost zero in the post-9/11 world. And so on the one hand, I had this experience of being more inspired than I had ever been. And on the other, I was incredibly frustrated. And I started to wonder how many other people my age were having that same experience. So the next summer, a group of about 12 of us got together and started a project called Just Name. The purpose was to go out and figure out what it was that was motivating young people right now to be engaged in the world. The And so between the 12 of us, we went to about 40 different countries. And these ran the gamut from East Africa to Russia to Europe to everything. And every single place that we went, we heard the same story over and over and over again. Incredible passion and energy, and an extraordinary amount of frustration at their lack of capacity to create change. And it was not that these kids were naive. They were not doing their things and then coming back and patting themselves on the back. They were frustrated, both local and people who were working internationally. And it just seemed to us that we had to do something. And so this is the important point. I never made a decision to start GES and to start CGE. I just got to a point where there was no way that I was going to be able to do anything else. And I think this is a really important difference. Things went great when we got here. It turns out that we were right, and there was an incredible amount of passion and energy. I hooked up with John Marina, who was in this room, and we started what was then called the International Youth Volunteers System. He brought all his friends from the study abroad program that had a really similar experience. And they told women, we had like 40 or 50 kids working on it the first year. We got the administration interested in $1,000. Pretty quickly, we started trying to convince them that the game was bigger, and we needed to shoot higher. We needed to start something that was permanent on Northwestern's campus, and was going to be creating this type of program in a repeatable, curricular, and integrated way. And that's what it's done for over. I spent my first 3 years at college working on that, and it was an amazing experience. I loved it. I loved seeing the transformation in these people's lives. And we had this philosophy that it wasn't our job to produce development professionals or social entrepreneurs or philanthropists. What we cared about was helping people figure out what they loved most, what they were best at, and how to create a life that was committed to the change that they wanted to see throughout their life. And there was one time of year that always got really sad. Every single year. And it was the time when juniors started to think about what they were going to do after college. And they started going to management consulting sessions. Every year, I would have dozens of conversations where people would come and ask about what they thought I thought they should do next, or what we thought they should do next. And they would talk about how BCG was selling them on the idea of their sort of their global programs that you could do and nonprofit stuff after 3 years or whatever it was. And they always had this sort of litany of reasons why, well, it's a good idea, I'll get some business experience, I'll come back and go into the nonprofit sector. And it was so frustrating, not because for some of these people it wasn't an amazing choice, because it was. There were a lot of people for whom consulting was a great next step. But there were a lot of people who just got to a point where success no longer equaled following their passion, being fully engaged, running GES or running something else 40 hours a week, doing their classes as well. The real world version of success came in, and that version didn't allow for that. Didn't allow them to go start a nonprofit if they wanted to start, or go work for another one. Had to be management consulting. Maybe teach them that. And so this really got me thinking about success. So I want to kind of give a premise. The premise is that the stories that society tells about success dictate how we pursue options, how we think about it. When society tells us a story about success that is about material wealth, or that is about beauty, or is about anything, that tends to be the overriding influence in our lives. Tends to be what we go pursue. We're success seekers naturally, and particularly in this crowd, we're all really ambitious. So when it's clear that the path is this thing, we do that. We try to do the best version of it, but we often do that. So that's premise one. Premise one is that the stories that we tell about success determine what success looks like for most people. The second premise that I want to put past you is that